Assalamu alaikum. So proud to be here today and continue the discussion that has been extremely fruitful during the day about generative AI. I want to spend the next 15 minutes, give you a perspective on how do you use generative AI in our businesses? How does organization leverage generative AI that we have been talking about all this time in the business? I want to go back 6 years ago, right? In 2016, 2/3 of the organization was not even considering, or they were just barely evaluating whether they want to use AI in the first place or not. 6 years later, 2/3 of the organization have already implemented, either at scale or implemented a pilot for artificial intelligence. That tells us the speed of how organizations are really adopting AI. And then last year came OpenAI that opened our eyes on a new realm that we can produce new opportunities in the market. We start talking about generative AI because, yes, it's not only about text, right? And I think we've heard today from His Excellency Yunus around the synthetic AI and how generative AI can generate synthetic AI, data, the use of images, the use of producing images, producing videos, producing audios, producing code. This is all what generative AI can do for us. And really, OpenAI was the spark of this. And I think one of the things that happened as well is at least as individuals, we start to relate, what can AI do for me, right? And if you look at even at the organizations, 2016 versus 2022 or 23, more CXOs today, they are much more aware of what AI is doing, and they're having this conversation. I spend most of my time right now in IBM talking to CXOs around the Middle East and Africa around how they're using generative AI in their business. And it's a very, very interesting discussion, right? And I think the core of it is not the technology as much as the use cases being used. So as we said, like 2/3 of the organizations today are implementing AI, and we believe that around 25% is really putting AI at work and putting AI at scale. Not everyone is putting AI at scale today. And out of those 25%, unfortunately, there's another element of AI that a lot of people, they don't look at right now, especially if they're in the piloting phase, which is the cost of doing AI, and specifically if it's generative AI. There is 1/4 of the people who put AI into at work, in production, at scale, realize what we call the cost of capital, or more than their cost of capital, which what we want from any ROI we want to do, right? It's not about the technology as much as what is the ROI for the business that is generating. So we're seeing more and more less organizations today have realized the right ROI that they need from AI and generative AI. And a big discussion that's happening with them is then why is there's a lot of inhibitors today? And I think we've heard it in most of the sessions today about the risks of AI, the challenges, and how is that really impacting the adoption of generative AI. But if we want to summarize it in a few areas, and through some of the researches that we did with our clients, we managed to look at least 80% of the responses were focused around these 4 areas, right, of why they're not adopting generative AI in specific, or AI in general, at scale. One is the explainability. Can we explain what happened? So we don't get into the hallucination effect. So we don't get into even the hypnosis effect, right? Can we explain what's happening in the background? Can we explain what happened in order an outcome to be generated? That was number one excuse for organization not to implement AI. The second one was around ethics. And are we using it responsibly? Are we on the borderline of IP infringement when we use generative AI? And then we start talking about the bias. If we bring a model Do we know what is the data that was used to train these models? Are we sure that does not hold a certain bias? And then in general, like a lot of other executives that were talking about trust in general, they just don't trust it, okay? So all of these was like a spark of then, although there is a huge opportunity, we need to address at least some of these challenges. And I think His Excellency Omar said it extremely well. It's not about the governance of the technology, it's about the use of the use case or the governance of the use cases. How do we govern then the use cases based on the ROI and the outcome that we're expected from it? Then in IBM, we said, okay, then we need to start shifting the mentality of how we think about artificial intelligence, right? And GenAI being one of them. Instead of what we call plus AI, like we're doing our business, we have our own business processes, and that we're trying to add to it AI, I think we need to think about it from the other end, which we think AI first. If AI is to be implemented, we need to change a lot of ways that we are thinking about our business, even sometimes redefining the business models that we are using, right? But in order to do so, and in order to be an AI-first organization, we need to take 3 principles into consideration. Number 1, we need to generate competitive advantage and a differentiation. If we cannot do it, then better not do it, right? So how can I, even whatever model I'm going to use, especially in GenAI, how can I create a competitive advantage to my organization? The second principle is, can I scale with it? Yeah, it's very good sometimes we see a lot of demos and a lot of pilots, but can I scale this pilot to be in real production? What's usually hindering scaling AI is the data, and I think we've heard it a lot today as well. So can I get access to the right data that I need to scale with my AI use cases, and GenAI in specific? And then the third principle is, can I implement the use case with a trustworthy manner? So can the users who are using it are trusting the outcome coming out of it? Because trust, it means not only sometimes risks in our business, but even adoption, right? And we need to make sure that it gets adopted. So these 3 principles became like the North Star for us in IBM when we think about any GenAI implementation. And with that in mind, we created a platform that actually tried to answer these 3 principles for any organization when they want to put generative AI into their business. Number 1, what we call watsonx.ai, and it's basically the part of the platform that allow organization to use the right models, not necessarily an IBM model, and not necessarily a model per se from a specific vendor, but the right model that actually can help them create a competitive advantage. Because we believe a lot in the use cases that will use multi-models in the same use case, whether because of cost or whether it's because of accuracy in a certain domain. And we're seeing multiple models coming even in the same domain, like large language models. There are many of them today. And I believe each one of them will have an advantage in one area. But once again, I'm a big believer that there is no one model that will rule it all, right? Probably the organization, not only the organization, but the use case will use multiple models from the same domain, from multiple large language models, based on what they're trying to achieve. So how can we build a platform or enable organizations to have a platform to onboard all the models they need? Actually, what we did in IBM, we started by partnering with Hugging Face to onboard a lot of their open source models. And then we build our own, and then we're allowing the organizations to build their own models, to fine-tune it, to do some prompt engineering in it in order to create this competitive advantage. The second part of the platform is around the data. How can I access the data that I need for the AI to scale? And GenAI in specific needs structured and unstructured data. So we are leveraging the data lakehouse technology in order to get a fit-for-purpose engines in a cost-effective manner to have access to the right data. Because sometimes I can get the data, but it becomes too expensive if I want to put it in one place for the AI to scale. The third part of the platform is around the governance. And I'll repeat again, and I really like His Excellency what he said, it's not about AI governance as governing the technology, but how can I introduce governance in the use cases I'm building? From the time I'm building it, think about, can I put even in the models that I'm using, can it have data sheets that explain based on which data, which algorithms, and so on that has been used to be trained? All the way when I put the model into production, how can I monitor the behavior on the model in order to still give me the right outcome and the right benefit and the right accuracy that I need? So those three parts of the platform, this is what we are doing in IBM in order to enable organizations to implement generative AI. So the last thing I want to leave you with then, how do you use generative AI with organizations? We believe there are more or less 5 domains where generative AI becomes extremely helpful. Number 1 is digital labor, right? Digital labor, what I call personally, having a sidekick for every one of our roles, right? How can I get every employee to have a sidekick that helps them do their job better, faster, more productive? Think about judges, think about doctors, think about call center agents, think about engineers and, in the field that are trying to fix something, right? Think about IT itself, right? And that comes to me to IT automation. How can I use generative AI to automate IT, to automate the way that we're managing our data centers, and we do more with less? The third part of the domains what we believe it can be a great benefit is around cybersecurity. How do we leverage generative AI in cybersecurity? And in the sense of really trying not just to detect what's happening, but to be able to generate the right scripts for a recovery or to ensure resiliency of our data centers and our environments. Another area where we use generative AI is around sustainability. How do we build models using generative AI that help us in the sustainability, in optimizing our data centers, in learning from other people, architectures, and spends in IT in order to create green IT and green data centers? And last but not least, AI modernization, or sorry, application modernization. How can I use generative AI to modernize a lot of the applications, especially that helping us in the journey of cloud, and I want to start generating code of Ansible that automate my infrastructure, or I want to transform a code that has been written in COBOL, one of the old mainframe languages, into Java and Python today. This is all can be done with the help of generative AI, right? So 5 discrete areas that we believe can help organizations, but I think the sky is the limit when we do it at the right governance at the use case level. Right, anyway, thank you so much for your time, and I hope it was informative for you.